pessimism sounds smart, but optimism is what makes money.
Welcome to The Standard. My name's Rhett Weaver. The idea behind this project is where average people have raised their standards. We're going to show you the blueprint. Let's do this. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I'm your host, Rhett Weaver. We have a really good friend of mine. I feel like everybody's a good friend of mine, but Luke Crapo's here. Hands down, I mean, he's a financial advisor. We'll get to that stuff. That's a real reason he's here. But honestly, one of the best golfers I've ever been around. I've never beat you, I don't think. And I played last year I haven't played a lot of golf, but I used to play a lot of golf, and I don't think I've come close.
Well, you just haven't spent enough time around other people. If I'm the best one you've ever been around.
That's a lie. No, how you doing, dude?
Dude, I'm good. I am good.
The reason I wanted to bring Luke on more than anything, he's been my financial advisor for a couple years now, and I think everybody's really interested in really retirement. At 37 years old, I think about it all the time. Like, how do I set my family up? What are we going to do? How do we invest? Where do we put our money? And sometimes that's just not my expertise. That's not the field that we play in. And so that's really the reason I wanted to bring Luke on. But before we dive into that, I think I enjoy people's background. I want to know where they came from, where they grew up. How did you even get into becoming a financial advisor? What sparked your interest? But I guess kind of tell everybody in a short version where you grew up, how you got into golf, how it kind of led into all that stuff.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. We could probably spend the whole hour on that, but no, just kidding. No, so I grew up in Kaysville, born and raised there, moved a couple times across the valley, and now back in Kaysville as of 2 months
Beautiful.
ago. So we always find our way back here.
I feel like my mother would be proud. There's no bigger disappointment than my kids not going to Davis High.
Oh, we could still probably make that happen.
We got a couple years to make it happen, don't we?
Yeah. So so grew up in Kaysville, and I guess the way I got into golf, believe it or not, was I remember that I found a golf club in my yard. But my dad's best friend when I was growing up actually had a golf green in his backyard, which I'm still kind of disappointed that you don't have one yet. But I know you're working on that. Coming. You have the lawnmower, you just don't have the green yet. But so they had a golf green in their backyard. So growing up, I would just go to their backyard and mess around. And so just kind of picked it up, started playing with my grandpa, and I was kind of just self-taught. So I wasn't the one traveling around the country. It was totally the kid that just would get dropped off of the golf course and then just go and, putt and chip and hit balls and play and whatever. And so, that's kind of how I got into it, and was very fortunate. Where we live, we have some awesome golf courses by us, and they were super affordable growing up. And so my dad does not play golf. I can count on one hand how many times I've played golf with my dad.
So who did you play with growing up? I mean, are you just saying let's go over to the course and just
I had a couple buddies that I would always go with growing up, and then I would go with my grandpa maybe once or twice a week, during the summer, and then started doing some junior league stuff at Valley View and that. But it was just kind of I would go with whoever wanted to go because I loved it. Yeah. And it's still kind of that way. If you know me, I'll go play golf with anybody that wants. So that's kind of how I got into that. And that was really fun. I mean, I played in high school and then had the chance to play in college as well. Yeah. And that was a blast. I think I learned a ton from that looking back. Maybe in the moment I didn't recognize it, but a lot of really good life lessons there. And it was actually while I was playing golf at Weber. I came home from an LDS mission. I redshirted a year, and I had already done some college credit in high school. So I was way ahead on all this, the academia side of it. And to stay eligible, I had to just come up with credit hours. So I'm panning through what is the class that I can take that is the least amount of effort possible. Yeah. And found myself in, I could just do an internship. That seems easy, and go to a lecture once a week.
Here's what's funny,
that's
dude,
it.
Is I made it maybe a year in college. So I have no idea what you're even talking about right now.
Well, yeah, I was just saying, is this above your pay grade right now?
This is way above my pay grade. Anybody that knows me, college, I would rather die.
Kind of like high school, just you pay to go. It's really weird.
You just pay a lot of money, and then hopefully once you're in a lot of debt, you just come out and make some money. That's the hope, right?
We could go down that whole route of it too. But no, it was actually, so I was a senior, had to stay eligible for the spring season, and I was like, okay, well, I need to do an internship. Yeah. And one of my other teammates was, he was interviewing to do an internship as like a financial advisor. And I was like, okay, I was a finance major,
Yeah.
had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was like, I might like that. That sounds kind of cool. And in his interview, they asked him if there was anybody else that they should be talking to. And he gave him my name. He ended up not doing the internship with that company, and I did.
Really?
And now he's like the director of basketball operations for a large university. And so it's like, it's funny because I wasn't really expecting that, right? Yeah. And he kind of like got me the foot in the door, and now I've been there for like 7 years.
No, so. I think it's all, like everybody that we meet with, I think what's super interesting, and this is why like I've always wanted to do the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. It's like something that you grew up doing led to where you are today.
Yeah.
And it's almost 100%. One of those things where I feel like so many people are out searching for what they're going to do in life, submit so many different resumes. And, you know, what I keep coming back to is it's like, it's pretty much in your own backyard. It's who you're around. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, the only reason I think you manage my money is because of golf. At the end of the day,
you know what? I'll take it. Like,
but like, that's what I tell people all the time. It's like the amount of business that I've done off the golf course, not only for home loans, mm-hmm. but like got to meet you, got to be my CPA, got to meet a lot of other people. A lot of that is just due to the golf community, you know? And so I think it's very interesting that, you know, you going to college just led to obviously something that you love and has kind of worked out for you. That's kind of where I'm at, is like, I think it's just very interesting, like the people that you're around, the people that you grow up with. Golf has just been a big community for me to meet a lot of people and get in a lot of people's networks, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's fun because it's like, I enjoy doing that. And if it allows me to spend time with people that I like being around too, and we're kind of doing something that we're commonly interested in, like, I think naturally you're just going to find out that there's like a lot of good people out there, right? Like, where else can you go that you're going to go spend 2.5 to 5 hours, depending on how many holes you're playing? It's like, you're going to inevitably talk about just like life. Like, tell me about your family. Like, tell me about your career. Tell me about, you know, all sorts of crazy stuff that you hear people talk about on a golf course.
That's what most people do. But when you play with me, I'm off Easter egg hunting in the trees, so we don't spend a lot of time talking. You just walk down the fairway.
No. That's true.
We got to argue about this before we actually dive into this financial advisor type stuff.
Okay, can't wait.
Best golf course you've ever played?
Oh,
here's the problem: is Luke has played some gems.
Yeah,
Luke's been back east. Luke's played some gems.
I would be remiss if I didn't say Pine Valley. It is the number one. Yeah, I mean, it's the number one in the world for a reason. It's hard though. Like, I was blown away. It's, first of all, it's like in a weird spot. Like, all of a sudden you're passing like a water park, and then you come around and you go across some train tracks, and you're like at the best golf course in the world. Yeah. Right. And it's amazing. Like, you get on the property and it's super unique. But it was hard, dude. Like, that is one of the hardest golf courses I've ever played.
Explain to people what Pine Valley is, though, because I don't think we're probably going to have some people sit here and Google it. But explain how you got to get on, how you can even be a member there, everything.
Oh, yeah. Good luck on all the above. Like, I feel like very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
The way that I got invited, just so we're clear, like, I was the, like, 8th man coming out of the dugout, like, bottom of the 9th. They just needed a body. Yeah. They needed a warm body. And so a guy that I work with, it's a good friend of mine, came into my office like Tuesday morning at like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, what do you got tomorrow? I'm like, dude, I like a day full of meetings and I don't know, everything else. He's like, do you want to go to Pine Valley? And I'm like,
meetings are canceled.
I was like on my computer immediately. I booked the flight, and it's like an astronomical amount to get back there in that much time. And I was like, no, there's like a few courses that if somebody asks you to go, you just drop what you're doing and you go. Like, you don't ask questions.
When's the next time you're going to get on that course?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's what I'm
Maybe
saying.
April, hopefully, like we're hoping.
Yeah, I hope I'm the 9th guy.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be the best. But yeah, it's the fun part with that too is not only do you meet a lot of great people, you get to go, like, when you start going and playing across the country, like, you get to go see places that you would never see.
Correct.
Right? Like, there's places I would have never gone. Like, I went to Alabama this year. No offense to anybody in Alabama. I probably wouldn't have found myself there.
Yeah.
Was it not for golf.
Correct.
Right? So it's really fun. It's great relationships, and obviously you get to travel a little bit.
I know. Honestly, I mean, we're sitting in my office. You can stare at the wall, but golf's a huge part of life.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's funny to me, because when we talk about golf courses, like, I think my argument on the West Coast is going to be Pebble Beach forever.
Yeah.
But I got Pebble Beach in like the most perfect state ever playing in a TaylorMade tournament.
Yeah.
You know, like with Zach over at Davis being on with the TaylorMade crew, like I caught it on the perfect condition.
Which, like, if we're going to talk about me playing Pine Valley, you at least got to mention Cypress because you've played Cypress. So it's not like you're sitting here having never played an amazing
People are going
golf
to Google
course.
what Cypress is now.
Well, they're going to be impressed. Like, that one is,
Yeah.
That's arguably the prettiest golf course in the world.
Yeah, Cypress, I get into this because everybody's going to want to know what Cypress is now. Cypress, genuinely, like I'm being very honest when I say this, it's amazing because you get the dunes, you get a little bit of the hills, and then obviously you finish out on the coast. So genuinely, you're not going to see a better golf course. If you ever get the opportunity, good luck trying to get on because it took a hard, we got very, very lucky, and I don't know if I'll ever play it again. But the great thing about Cypress was completely the back nine along the ocean. That's why I think everybody loves it.
Yeah.
The worst part about Cypress, and it's the worst part ever, and this is why Pebble Beach probably takes the cake over Cypress, is it's super old school. So you can't take any rangefinders with you.
Yeah.
So you have to have a caddy from Cypress, which is fine. I love not carrying my bag. That's great for me.
Yeah.
You can't take a rangefinder, and then all of the sprinklers are coated. So it doesn't say 150 on it. It has like some weird letters on it. So only the caddies know the yardage. Crazy. And so imagine playing with a couple professionals that are hitting shots that aren't anywhere close to what the yardage really is. And imagine their frustration with the caddies playing one of the, probably next to Augusta.
Yeah.
What is rumored is probably the second hardest golf course to get on in your life. Mm-hmm. And that's the experience.
Well,
but the par 3 on the back, hitting it over the ocean, it makes up for it.
I was going to say, it probably makes up for it just
it's
on that
easy
part.
to shoot 100 there.
One day, hopefully. One day.
No, but arguably, like, the ocean course of Key Island, that could be... That could be another gem. I've talked to you about that. We'll get there soon.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
That's the next one on the list. But
no, the real reason I want you here is, I wanted to talk about financial advisors. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions, like in my world with the finance side of doing home loans, we take a look at 401ks for people and stuff like that to kind of move money around, pull it out. Some people are telling them that's not the brightest idea. Other people are saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. Mm-hmm. And so I think from kind of your experience, and I'm sure, you probably got some questions for me too, but from the financial side of stuff, like why should somebody move their money over to you, let's say, versus just doing like the standard 401k 3% match from the company if you're fortunate enough to get something like that?
Yeah.
Like why diversify it? Why put it with somebody like you versus just letting Fidelity or somebody just run the account?
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously going to matter like person to person.
Correct.
I think that's like the first thing you always have to keep in mind is for some people, it might not be a good fit, and that's okay. And I recognize that. And it's like, hey, we can still be friends. We can still golf. If this is not a good fit, how we can help you or just help people in general.
What do you feel like the feedback is though? Like, why would they not invest with somebody like you?
Yeah. I like the easiest example I could give to you, and I just think it's almost apples to apples, which is if you were going to go to the gym, right? Everybody knows going to the gym is beneficial. Like there's long-term benefits. You don't see the short-term benefits today. You could go to the gym and it's going to be actually way better than if you don't go. You're going every day, you're lifting the weights, like you're doing the work. If you go to the gym and you have a trainer, my question would be is like, what outcome do you think is typically going to be better?
Probably a little bit better.
Probably.
You're gonna get pushed.
It's like, yeah, you're going to get pushed a little bit. I think the other thing is like, they're going to be able to kind of see like the blind spots of things that you can't see. Like you're not always going to be able to look at like, hey, how's my form, or like, what's my diet or nutrition part? Like that's the same thing I think with an advisor is they should be able to really kind of see those blind spots that you can't always see. Like relating it back to golf, every single good golfer or any professional athlete, I think they all have a coach. Like Tiger has a coach.
Yep.
Right. Still does to this day. Arguably the best golfer ever. That's a whole nother debate, but arguably the best golfer. It's like every single one of those guys have a coach. And so from that standpoint, I think about it the same for people where it's like, look, if I think your results are just going to be better, not maybe necessarily it's like, does fund A or B get a better rate of return?
Correct.
I think it's really more around different areas that they can really help you and push you to maximize what you are doing.
Yeah. Right? What I feel like for me is it's like, I just don't know that realm. You know, like I work with some agents and some different lenders and some other people, like they enjoy that. They love looking into it. They want to manage their own money.
Yeah.
You know, like all that's great. For me, like don't even care.
Yeah.
But for me, I also know like there's a safety in trying to understand, how do I take care of my family? How do I make sure my kids are probably taken care of later in life? So that's kind of, that's kind of my question is do you think people are just overwhelmed and they just like, it's easier just to like do what the company says versus sitting down with somebody like you,
Yeah.
breaking this all down, understanding, oh crap, we actually have to save money. We can't keep spending or living the way that we're living. Like,
Yeah.
is that kind of the hard part in the conversations that you feel like you have, or do you feel like people are generally pretty good at saving money?
Yeah. Question is like, are people generally good at saving money? Yes and no. When they're good, they're really good. And when they're not good, they're not good at all.
Yeah. Because obviously life happens.
Yeah. There's like not really an in between. That question though, I think the other thing that comes to mind is most of the time when we're working with people, it's because they're stretched thin already. So they're family people, right? So they're taking care of kids and running them from A to B, and they're doing vacations and all that stuff. Around Utah is like a lot of people have like ecclesiastical duties that they're doing. And then they are typically very successful in whatever realm that they're doing, right? And so they're already stretched thin. And so the last thing that they want to be worried about is like, hey, am I going to have to work forever? Like, I just don't want to worry about this. So they're going to take things that they can and they're going to offload them to somebody else that can really like take care of something that frankly is for most people super important, right? I mean, I think there's very few things that you could argue are more important for most people than finances outside of like health and family. I mean, I think those are kind of like top three. And spiritual side, I would throw that in there too. But so with that, I think a lot of people appreciate having somebody that they can offload that part and kind of like mentally just dump that to the side and not have to worry about it. Right. So
no, it makes a lot of sense. I think these are, maybe let's dumb these down a little bit because it's got to be dumbed down for me. But I usually feel like the reason I'm calling you is because it's like, hey, in a W-2 situation, what should I do? In a self-employment situation, what should I do? And I know there's stuff you can and cannot talk about, or coaching, whatever it is. But like for somebody that's just like a W-2 employee, right? Like life is set in stone. They're a salaried employee. They know what they got coming in, going out every single month. Their company's doing a 401k match. Let's just assume they're maxing that out. What is it, 19.6 now? What is
well, it's going to go up to 22.5.
So 22.5.
Yep, for next year.
So the government's getting a bonus.
They're getting a bonus, and so
no, which is great because I mean it needs to with inflation and everything that's going on. I think it's smart to get up to the 22.5. So like if you're a W-2 employee, let's say you max that out of the 22.5. Right. How are there any other like tax benefits? Let's say, right? Is there any way to maybe at the end of the year, shift some money over to you, take a tax benefit so we pay less to the government, keep a little bit more money? Or being a W-2 employee, is it just one of those things where it's like, hey, just give me what you can? It just that kind of stinks for you.
Yeah. So W-2 employees are probably the hardest ones, frankly. There's just not a lot of benefits like under the IRS tax code that is going to allow them to continue to reduce your income, if that's what we're talking about. So in a 401k, when you put in, let's say in 2023, you put in the 22.5, you can deduct all that from your income. So if your income's at whatever, then you can take off the 22.5 that you put in. And now all of a sudden you're going to pay a little bit less as a result of that. The reality is there's not a lot of other great vehicles that allow you to do that. One particular thing that might make sense in somebody's situation, depending on their healthcare stuff, is like an HSA. You can maybe get a deduction there. That's all going to be towards medical expense type things.
Which is beautiful. Because a lot of those HSAs now is like after you get over a certain...
you can invest them. You can
invest the money. So you might as well max that contribution.
You figure you're going to have health costs at some point. It's just a matter of when you have them.
Correct.
So, like HSAs are little things that you can do. You're going to get like some deduction from your mortgage, right? So if you're paying interest on your mortgage, like that's a deduction there. And then depending on your income, you're usually going to get like some sort of child tax credit. Outside of that, there's not a ton of things that you're going to be able to say, hey, let's put a bunch of money in this to get a tax deduction. Right. There are other vehicles that you can use to create wealth, which there's a number of those things, whether you're using real estate or other investment type funds. But most of the time on the real estate side, I might defer some of that to you, but there's some tax benefits there. On the investment side, you use your 401k there's some other things that you can get some tax benefits, but not from the standpoint that they're going to give you like a deduction.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part, is like W-2, you're pretty handcuffed in terms of like what deductions you're usually going to be able to take.
Yeah. No, and I feel like, I mean, you probably hit it on the head. Probably one of the easiest ones to reference over to is probably the real estate side of it.
Yeah.
Where you own a rental, you're receiving rents, you get to, basically write off, any expenses for that year. But the good part about that is like you can also write off depreciation. So you depreciate that asset, which obviously lowers your taxable income as well. And the great thing in my world is the depreciation can always be added in for income.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful part about this. So even when you're losing money, like on a rental and a depreciating asset, we can still add that back in and use that as income to help qualify for more things.
Yeah, which is always awesome. That probably helps in tons of situations.
Correct.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
I guess, so let's shift over to like somebody that's self-employed. Yeah. Like obviously you said W-2, it's a little rough. Being self-employed is much better.
Yeah.
I guess kind of explain the benefits of the self-employed part of this and,
Yeah, so the self-employed side, I love to spend time on that side because, frankly, I feel like I can bring more value, right? Like there's just a finite amount of things that you can do with W-2. 1099, it's just like more doors open, right? And so when you're 1099, depending on what business, let's say that you're running, you're typically going to maybe have like an LLC or something, or have like your business set up. And so whatever qualified business expenses you have, you're able to deduct those from like more the investment side. There's now more retirement accounts and things that you can get tax deductions or tax-free growth out of, because you think about that W-2 employee, their employer setting all that up for them.
Correct.
Right? Like they set up the 401k, they do the match and all that. If you're 1099, like it's just on you. Like you are the employer.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a number of different options, whether, depending on the situation, you have like solo 401ks. You might even set up like a full on 401k for yourself, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, like the list kind of goes on. But each one of those things can provide value from like a tax perspective.
And a lot of those things you're talking about income based, right? I mean, some of these IRAs, if you make too much money,
like some of them, and that's why it's like, okay, well, how do I know which one to do? Like, I not me, but like anybody, just go find an advisor. They should be able to walk through it. A lot of CPAs are pretty well versed in that. But yeah, some of them, if you make too much money, you can't use. On others of them, it's like, depending on how you're paying yourself through your 1099, it might make sense to use one as opposed to another. And a lot of times we're making those decisions for clients based on like what or the total amount that they really want to be putting into the account, right? Because some of them have way bigger capacity to put in larger sums, or some of them are kind of designed to just set aside smaller amounts of money. Yeah. So it just depends.
And honestly, I don't know if we can talk about this, but I'm going to say it and then you're going to tell me no.
I was going to say, we can cut it out if we need to.
But, I think one of the best information that I learned even before I chatted with you is I remember somebody calling like a backdoor 401k. Yeah. Which I thought was like super interesting. I remember just staring at the guy thinking like, what is a backdoor 401k? Yeah. Right. And I remember like a couple years later, I hit you up once, the whole self-employment side of things happened. And I'm like, hey, I know we can do obviously now the 22,000, but at that time it was a lot less. I'm like, is there any other way to get more money into the 401k? And you're like, yeah, you can backdoor that thing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what's that?
There is a section kind of the tax code, and frankly, there's a new bill coming out. It's like the Secure Act 2.0. This is totally on the hot seat right now for being like nixed and thrown out the door.
Let's hope not.
So then the war with Ukraine and Russia happened, and it kind of got put on the back burner. But essentially what it does is there are some accounts where there's an income threshold where if you make over that amount, your adjusted gross income, but if you make over that, you can't put money directly into the account. So what you do is you put it into another account, you pay the tax on it, and then you can funnel it into there. It's a little bit complex and there's some paperwork, and if you don't do it right, and there's a number of there's just a ton of rules with it. Yeah. If you're going to do it, typically it's best to have like a professional help you. So you should probably,
right? That's what I'm saying. Like, this is what I think I'm interested in, because there's I think everybody hears something.
Yeah, totally.
And I feel like in my career, once I felt like I could start investing money, I went to some people that had a lot more money than I did. Mm-hmm. And then I just started asking them the questions. Yeah. And then things like that came out of their mouth. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
I don't know.
But apparently you got a financial advisor. He kind of set you up on all this stuff. You kind of understand it. Hopefully I can understand it one day
Yeah. You're trying to make sense of it. Like, correct. Can I start with anything more basic? And I think like that's part of when you are looking at maybe doing some things outside of what you're comfortable with is rely on a professional, right? Yeah. It's the same reason why I don't just go list my house and say, hey, I'm going to sell it. Like somebody would rake me over the coals and probably take it out from under me for borderline free, right? Yeah. And so other than that, I mean, you kind of look and you say, there's a lot of different things.
Like, I won't lie. You were just good at golf, so I didn't really vet you out. I just asked, okay. I said, hey, is Luke a good dude? To some other people, they're like, yeah, he's a good dude. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's just do this. But I know people like look into financial advisors. They kind of interview them. Yeah. I know people have different views and opinions on, let's just say life insurance, and some people don't sell it and like blah, blah, blah. Right. Mm-hmm. If you now knowing what you know. Yeah. And if you were to go interview a financial advisor, if you weren't one, I guess what are some of the questions that you would ask them or you would look for to understand that they're going to take care of your money in the best interest? Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, he's going to sell me a product that's high commission, and so like I may not get a return on this. For sure. He cares more about himself than he does me. So what are the questions that you may ask financial advisors to kind of understand that part?
That's a good one. So everything you're asking kind of comes down to one question I would for sure ask, which is like, are you a fiduciary? Right. So
explain that.
Okay. I was going to say, let's go down that. Cause I know it's like, it's more like, okay, what does that mean? Like, let's simplify that. So a fiduciary is going to be somebody that acts in your best interest before their own. Right. So anything that they're recommending to you is because they've had an in-depth conversation to understand like, hey, how does your world really operate? Is this going to be in the best interest of you?
And who's controlling that? Like, how would we know if you are? And then is anybody like at your specific company or somebody backing that?
Yeah, for sure. Reasons? So depending on the company, usually if they are, they're going to come out and tell you that pretty early on, because that's a huge indicator of, just how they operate, right? Like there's a lot of different kind of ways that you can operate as an advisor. And so being a fiduciary is going to be one of the top ones I think that you would want to find out is just, hey, are they going to be acting in my best interest? One of the things that you'll look for, and this is probably the question you might be asking, is a CFP designation requires a fiduciary.
There we go.
Right there. Right?
Why are some advisors not?
Why are some advisors not?
Yeah.
It's a really hard test. I'm taking it in March and it's really hard.
Oh, so that's what it is.
Yes.
So you've got to test into it.
Yeah. You got to test into it. You have to have a certain amount of time in the industry. And then frankly, like, I know this might sound hard to believe. Like some people don't want to operate as a fiduciary. That's like probably blows your mind. You're like, wait, what? Like, why would they not want to operate in my best interest? And I think that kind of goes back to when you're looking for somebody, like not only are you looking for somebody that's going to have your best interest in mind, there's got to be trust there. So you've got to find a way to like create some trust, whether it's, hey, he works with a good friend of mine or somebody that I trust implicitly. But above and beyond that, I think you have to make sure that your values line up. Yeah. Right. Like, like I know just from talking to you, like what some of your values are just by the way that you operate, and even asking a question like, hey, what are your values? Like, what's your mission statement? Like those type of things. Yep. Just like you would, because usually with an advisor, it's like a long-term type relationship for most people. Correct. It's not like a transactional type thing. And I think that's probably one of the bigger differentiators of being an advisor is for most of them, it's not transactional unless they are just selling a product. Most of them, it's not transactional. It's far more relationship based. And so there's a lot of trust there because, frankly, you're talking about finances, which a lot of people requires an immense amount of trust to be able to talk about that and just help people. Yeah. One thing that I want to ask you, because this is probably in the back of a lot of people's heads. It's like, Luke, you lost me a lot of money this year. But I mean, the whole market's been down. You know what I'm saying? So I know people get frustrated in that situation and they probably look at you as an advisor and be like, well, why didn't you make my money? Why didn't you do something with it? Totally. I think my question is, in these type of markets, how do you handle that situation and what's the advice coming out of this market? Yeah, it's not like an easy one to answer in terms of like, hey, why is the market down? Correct. Like, I think we could sit here and talk for an hour as to like why it is. Yeah. But the reality is there's a really interesting thing about most people, when they're thinking of money, think so much about like the technical side, right? It's like, is this investment better than that investment? Is, stock A better than stock B, or is account A better than account B? And the thing that I have found in working with people is there's so much more about the psychology and the behavior with people as
Short-term
opposed
thinking?
to, that's some of it, but it's like as opposed to the technical side,
Okay.
right? So, okay, the market's down year to date. That stinks, right?
Yep.
Nobody's happy about it. Maybe like the people that are shorting the market, which they're betting against the market. But if you look on a little bit longer time horizon, I think that's one question is like, hey, when do I think I'm going to need this money?
Yeah.
Right. You look at it that way. It's like, well, do I need it today? Right. If I don't need it today, then can I wait this out? Like, can I give my money some time to heal or to recover? And so a lot of times it's like, I'll sit down with somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I've lost all this money in my account. And like, it's not a fun feeling, but have you lost the money yet? Because to me, you've only lost the money once you recognize or once you actually sell out of that investment.
Correct.
So think of like houses, right? You buy a house and you buy it for $500,000. 6 months from now, it's only worth $450,000. Like, do you sell the house or do you just wait it out until it comes to where?
I mean, to me, I kind of feel like it's no different in my market right now. The funny thing to my industry right now in the housing industry is when home prices were skyrocketing and we had a worldwide pandemic, which means rates until World War III comes will never be that low again.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to buy because they were just saying, oh, home prices are skyrocketing. I'm going to sit tight until they come down.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen the shift in all the homes coming way back down, right? Everybody's sitting tight and being like, not going to do this with this interest rate. And what's funny to me is it's like it's supply and demand.
Totally.
It's, hey, we're on a housing shortage. The second this thing flips and rates come back down, it's only going to start going back up again.
Yeah, it's just going to flip.
And what's funny is when like I just did the math the other day, it's like if you would have taken a house from 21 that went for 5 or 10% higher, let's just say a $500,000 house that ended up going for, let's just assume 540.
Yeah.
Versus today, a $500,000 house you can probably pick up for 475, a $60,000 swing. With where interest rates are today versus where they were a year ago, you're paying about $120 difference in payment.
Yes, it's not.
It's nothing. $120, and here's what's going to happen. Once interest rates go back to 5, the housing market's going to move. Yep. You're going to gain the equity, so you are $120 for 6-7 months, and then you're everything's going to skyrocket, and you make instant equity of $25,000-$30,000.
Yeah.
But nobody thinks like that, right? The $120 investment per month. If I told you would make $30,000-$40,000 here in 8 months, you would do it in a heartbeat.
Totally.
But nobody looks at it like that. So everybody's short-term thinking on, look at the loss, look at the market. No way I'm going to buy right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking like, this is probably one of the best 4-month swings you're ever going to have in your life until this happens again, which took a decade.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because like, the market and real estate do kind of follow each other to a degree. They're maybe not total mirror images of one another, but I noticed that like pessimism sounds smart, but optimism is what makes money.
Yeah.
Right. So you could take a lot of those situations and say, okay, well, it's like, you read any headline, like if we opened up our phones right now and went to like common, just like the most basic, like news outlet, I would almost guarantee, especially if it's like money related, it's like bad, bad, bad. Today might be an exception because the market was awesome today, right? Like very, very positive. But even there, I bet if we went on there, most of the headlines are negative.
Correct.
Right. And that I think changes people's way of thinking. And it's the same thing. Like if we go look, it's going to talk about how interest rates are higher than they've been in, however long.
Yeah.
Right.
20 years.
Yeah. 20 years.
But what was it before that?
Yeah, exactly.
Way higher.
Exactly. Like you go back when my parents bought a house in the early 80s, like my dad telling me his interest rate on his house was 18%.
Yeah. Wild.
Dude, that is putting a house on a credit card nowadays.
Correct.
Like imagine putting a house, like swiping. I just bought a house on a credit card and carrying that. When you refinance like 14%, he's like, I just struck gold. Yeah. I'm like, if rates went to 14% right now, like there would be pandemonium, right? Like it wouldn't happen.
Great interest savings off of his tax bill at the end of the year. Though.
Exactly. That's all that you could look forward to. But
I want to ask you this question. So what's funny, you're going to laugh at me. Tony Robbins came to town one time. I thought it'd be fun. I didn't realize I was going to like -degree weather and jumping, so I'll probably never go back. But I did think what was interesting, I think his son started some type of financial advisor company. Mm-hmm. And I think what was interesting to me is he brought up, when I was there were like only a certain number of days in the history of time that if you didn't have your money in the market, like you missed out on an absurd amount of money, like gains.
Yeah.
You know, like kind of happened today. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have your money in the market today, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But have you kind of seen that trend? I mean, do you feel like it's maybe 1 or 2 days that could potentially make you a ton of money if you're not in?
Yeah, it's like all the research, like I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I like to back everything I'm telling people with just like research and like the analytics of it, because to me, it gives me more conviction around like, well, why is it this way? Like, why do I know what I'm telling you is correct? And so if you look at history, during like a bear market, which is what we're in, so the market's down, 20% year to date, call it just roughly, over the last 40 years, more than half of the best days in the market over the last 40 days or 40 years have come in the middle of a bear market. So in the middle of like when things seem like they're in the dumps and in the depths the very most, that's when you have the biggest jumps. Like today, we're like, depending on what index you're tracking, you're like 4 to 6% in one day.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's like a massive jump, right? And you kind of look back over, like take COVID, for example. I know this might like taboo topic to bring this back up and a lot of PTSD for people, but do you remember in COVID, like the day that COVID happened? Like, could you ever pick out like the day that it happened?
I would have to look back, but I just remember was Rudy Gobert just shut the world down.
That's all I remember like sitting in front of my TV, Jazz game is like ready to tip off.
Yep.
And it's like the world shuts down. And I'm like, looking around like, wait, what?
And it was
like the market bottomed March 10th. Don't quote me on this, but last time I looked at, I think it was like March 10th that it bottoms, right? Then you go, that started on March 10th. So like kind of my version of like the world shut down is around that time period. Like Gobert gets COVID, world shuts down.
Yep.
Like March 10th. From March 10th to March 23rd, market bottoms, right? Like that's when we just like go off this cliff and everybody's kind of freaking out. And next thing you know, Fed comes out. What do they say? We're going to send out stimulus. We're going to send out PPP money. And we're coming out with a vaccine. And what happens to the market? Whew, straight up, right? Yeah. The market reacts faster than I think people really think it does.
Correct.
Because all it needs is like the smallest glimmer of hope for people to be like, okay, we're back in the game, right? Then you have the 50 highest, like the next 50 days was like the biggest, fastest run in the history of the market.
Yeah.
When things were still really scary. Like I remember bringing groceries home and we're like wiping them down with Clorox wipes. Yeah. Like what were we doing, right? But the point to that question that you asked is like, you never know when those good days are going to be. And they tend to really be when times seem like they're the darkest. Like today's the example, right? Yeah. It's like you get the smallest glimmer of hope today. What was it? Well, inflation is now 0.4% less than what it was last year.
Yep.
Small glimmer of hope.
Huge gains though.
Everybody is like, okay, we're back on board. So
correct.
The market reacts before things really, really change. The market reacts immediately.
So here's a question that I got for you, and help us understand the market, because I don't think people are well educated in the market.
Yeah.
Why, is it just because people are pulling their money out? Like why does the market start to just go low? You know what I'm saying? Just start to trickle down.
Yeah. I know market seems like this mythical place, right? Like what do people talking about when they talk about the market?
Yep.
Right. And why do things go low? Like there's not always one particular reason, but when you look at it's a bit of a supply and a demand thing, right? Well, are people buying more Apple stock today, or are they selling more Apple stock today?
Yep.
Right. And do people want to buy or do they want to sell? And so the market tends to kind of follow that from like a day-to-day thing. I don't think that it's always going to indicate the health of a business necessarily, but over long periods of time, you're going to see, companies that do well, that innovate, that continue to show profits are going to become more valuable.
Yep.
Right? As they become more valuable, the market rises or their stock price rises.
Yeah.
And so when there's declines, there's usually downward pressure on things like profits, right? So right now there's a lot of talk in like the tech industry of some bigger layoffs, and that kind of can drive the price of the stock down. It always can be driven by like a number of things, but that's an example of it's a lot of times kind of more directed around what's going on currently.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Talk to me. I've got this question. Like, I'm an insurance guy, I don't know. I feel like anybody can sell me insurance. Just, I think growing up, I was like super anti all insurance.
Yeah.
And now that I've got assets, it's like, give me earthquake, give me everything you possibly can. So I know the question comes out a little bit of time about like life insurance. That seems like the one conversation where some advisors are like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Other advisors are like, great place to put your money.
Totally.
I guess tell everybody what life insurance is, number one. Let's break it down super basic. But number two, the benefit of why life insurance is a good asset to put your money as well.
Yeah, it's always person to person, right? But you break it down to its basic form is life insurance is going to be there in the moment that you need it most, right? So in the untimely demise of a spouse or somebody in the family, there is dollars that come into the household to replace that person from a financial standpoint, right? So as like a primary income earner, there's going to be a difference in the family.
I know we joke about this all the time. I'm worth a heck of a lot more money dead than alive. So I tell Keely all the time, I'm like, life might be a lot easier if I'm just dead. Hey, it may not be as fun, but she would have a heck of a lot more money.
It'd still be fun. No, I mean, that's the reality though, is like we protect things that we can't replace. And so if somebody wasn't around, could their income be replaced? And that's where you're going to see it. There's different forms and variations. And, I think from an argument standpoint, you say, okay, like the academia of life insurance, like when you truly understand how that plays into somebody's overall financial picture, when you see that part of it, that makes a lot of sense. Strategically, like the smartest people that I know, I'm talking about people that manage billions of dollars at hedge funds, that manage, big, large like bond funds and fixed income. You're talking about like any of these, and I'm saying these, like they manage money for a living. They're the ones that are at these huge firms in New York and, San Francisco. Those guys that understand it, they use it, right? So they understand the strategy. Where I think people go wrong is they go wrong on the execution. And I think it's that way with a lot of things. It's like, if the strategy is sound, there's probably poor execution.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I think that can go wrong. You're going to have people argue one way or another. Ernst & Young actually did a study about a year ago, incredibly helpful when breaking down like the strategy and the science behind how insurances are integrated with like investments.
Yep.
And that was kind of one of the things that was really eye-opening to me, is it provided better results when you had both.
Yeah.
So I think where people really kind of tend to get in trouble when it's like, it's an all or nothing type of thing, where it's like, hey, I'm either doing all into one thing or all into another thing. It's kind of going back to maybe some of the other questions you've asked, but when you have money in different areas, it's just going to give you options. So you might have money in real estate. You might have money in the stock market. You might have money in like a business or something that's producing revenue and giving you a stream of income. Most people don't have this, but you might have like a pension, right?
Yeah. So
the more places that you have money, the better off I think you're going to be, because you're more nimble and flexible in terms of like, where can I pull this from when I need it?
Correct.
Because that's really why we do all this stuff, right? Like, why do we put money away? Like why do we invest? If you break it down to its core, it's because we want to be able to have money when we need it.
Correct.
But we also want it to have a chance to grow. And kind of like the most common thing I hear people tell me around this is like, I want my money working for me when I'm not working.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so these are just some different areas where you can potentially have that happening.
Yeah. Love it. Here's probably a question that maybe some people are thinking. What do you have to do to become a financial advisor?
No, that's a great question. Financial advisor, to be honest, I think it's a pretty loose term. And sometimes I think that it can give a black eye to the industry, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And here's why is there's really kind of different types of advisors that exist, right? Like you have some advisors that all they do are insurance products. So life insurance, annuities, those type of things.
Okay.
You have some advisors that are strictly, I'll refer to them as just like money managers. And they're saying, okay, this is where we're going to put the money. We're super focused on like rate of return, stock A, stock B, and they're good at what they do, right? A lot of great people in that world. Then there's kind of like advisors from a more holistic standpoint. I spend more of my time in that world where they're talking about, okay, not only investments, but insurances, but what about like your taxes, or what about like sending your kids to school down the road, like education planning, or what happens to my estate when I'm no longer around, right?
Yep.
Or charitable gifting, or there's just all these different areas above and beyond that I think a lot of times people don't know where to go for the answers. And so that's more of a holistic. So like a financial advisor, like you take some tests and you can kind of call yourself a financial advisor.
Here's what's kind of funny to me. I'm going to botch this.
That's okay.
But like in order to pass the mortgage stuff, it's like 40 hours. You know,
is that a lot of time? I don't know.
I don't think it is. When you talk to like somebody that cuts hair, I think it's like 120 hours or something.
Yeah.
So somebody that cuts hair spends more time studying for a test than somebody like me. And I think real estate's even worse as far as the amount of time to get like a real estate license. So like, what's the amount of time you got to put in? Is there amount of hours you got to put in before? Do you got to be an intern somewhere before you can take a test? Like, what does that look like?
So you do have to take some testing. And it depends on kind of what area you're going to focus on. If you're doing like insurance only, right, you've got to take your insurance test. If you're doing investment only, you might need to take like a 663, Series 7, those type of tests. Then above and beyond that, in the world of finance, there are what they call designations, right? So you see people on LinkedIn that have like all those little letters behind their name. Those are like additional certifications that say like, hey, this person is competent in XYZ areas, right? So you have a number of designations. You'll look at them, you'll have no clue what they mean. Like, I don't even know what a couple of them mean.
That's my favorite thing when you get like an email signature and it's got the whole alphabet on it. It's you're like I don't care.
The reality is like, okay, I don't know what any of that means, but I know that you're smart and I know that you probably know what you're talking about.
Let's
right?
hope.
So from like an advisor standpoint, I say that there's kind of a black eye because you can have somebody become an advisor in the matter of a couple months that doesn't have a lot of experience, which I do think there's a difference between experience and exposure. Like you could have somebody that has 20 years of experience, but what have they done in that 20 years? Like what has their exposure been? Right? Like today alone, I think I had like 13 meetings today. That's a lot of exposure. Your experience is more just like the time. So, you know, from that standpoint, maybe not super hard to become an advisor, but every advisor has to have a broker dealer. So they've got to have somebody that is going to run all their compliance. It's who they're usually like running a lot of their investments or insurance through, those type of things. So every advisor's got to have a broker dealer. They've got to be, you know, licensed, and then credentialing is kind of like the, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Typically.
That's awesome. What is, I guess, talk to me like day to day. What does that look like for you?
Day to day.
What's the grind?
Depends on the day. You know, today it actually looks a little different than it did 5 years ago, which I think is a good thing. It means you're growing and you're having, you know, some different experiences. But day to day, I mean, we're meeting with people, taking calls all day. You know, the lifeblood of our business and the way that we grow it is referral based. So,
I was going to say, like, some people have this question in the mortgage industry, right? Like some people dive into mortgages and go with a company that lead gens. They don't make very much money. And then there's some people that do it on their own. How are you set up? You just doing your own thing?
100% word of mouth. Like my philosophy is if we take good care of people and we do a good job, word of mouth is going to take over. And frankly, like if we just ask people a lot of times, and that can be hard. Like you have to swallow your pride a little bit to just be like, hey, like I need some help. We're trying to expand our practice. We're trying to expand who we're working with and our impact that we're having like in the community. And, you know, we'd love to maybe brainstorm and talk to you about some folks that we can just introduce ourselves to.
Yeah. Right? So it's a grind.
It's a total grind, but I mean, this is the blessing and the curse for me is I was very fortunate that I didn't ever have to do an interview outside of like meeting with, you know, my current broker dealer right now. Like that was it. I didn't do a resume. Like I don't remember handing him a resume because I was in college. Like they knew I didn't have experience, right? And so I never knew anything different than what I've always done. And so the blessing is that I didn't know anything different. I don't know if there really is a curse, but so from that standpoint, I'm very grateful that I didn't know anything else, because people tell me it's hard work, like other people that come in and become an advisor after that have been in different areas, but it's all I've ever known. So to me, it's just like, this is just what I do. And, you know, there's good days and bad days, but the thing that makes it worth it is like when you get the thank you from people where it's like, hey, I couldn't have done this myself. Yeah. And that's when it's like super rewarding, where it's like, hey, thank you for spending the time to like help us. This is going to make a huge difference for us.
What's your advice for somebody looking to get in? Like, you obviously started at a very young age. So I think the benefit of that, you didn't have a lot of overhead, a lot of bills. You didn't have a family. Yep. Obviously you got a wife now that is graduated. Yeah. Probably making big money now.
Sugar mama.
Finally got through her 40 years of college.
Yeah. That's what it felt like.
But I mean, let's just assume somebody's 30 years old with a family. Yeah. You know, is this something that they can jump into and in 1 or 2 years financially being okay? Is it something that, you know, 6 months in you could do that? Yeah. Like what would you say if you were in a position of having a family or having overhead? Yeah. Like what would you plan for financially, maybe getting started and not making any money versus to having a couple bucks come in?
Early on, I think my first question to that person is just like, just tell me how hard you're going to work and I can tell you the answer to that. Yeah. Because you've experienced this. You can have people come in and they maybe don't put and go pedal to the metal. Like in this, if you've got overhead, if you've got the family, like you got to put food on the table, like you got to run hard. Yeah. Right. Like you're going to work a lot of hours. You're going to have to push yourself really hard. But I think that long term, what the benefits of that can be are substantial. Right. Yeah. So the opportunity is great for the right person. Not everybody is the right person, and that's Correct. Okay, right? That's just always going to be the case, and it's that way in your world, right? Correct. It's like, hey, for the right person, this is a great opportunity. It's just not right for every single person. Yeah. That 30-year-old though is like, look, if you go in and you bust your tail, it will work out. Like the one thing I like about when I got into it, I was just shown there's like a system, right? I was taught a system that they did. This was like another research thing. So you see I'm like this big nerd, but they did this 40-year study of like, how do you build a financial planning practice? They did it in Chicago, like post World War II, all the way up through like the 80s. And it's like, how do you build a financial planning firm? And it's like vetted out. It's so frustratingly accurate that it like drives me crazy. I'm like, I know how many people I need to see. I know how many people I need to call. I know how many people I need to do X, Y, Z things with, that I can build a
Can you send me that?
Absolutely.
I'd love to see it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think the hardest
fun
part
that way, right? Because it's foolproof. So that 30-year-old, it's like, look, tell me how hard you're going to work. Yep. I'll show you the system that can make this a viable opportunity for you. And then just, if you can chase it down, like it works. Like I'm living proof, and I'm, I feel like I'm an average guy.
Yeah, correct. Here's kind of my 2 cents on it, right? Because I do run into this a lot of times in my industry. Mm-hmm. And like, I remember it was like right around like year 4 where I kind of figured out, it's like, hey, I feel like I'm peaked. Like, I don't really know like what I'm going to say to people if I cold call. So like, that sucks. And then if I actually got in front of them, how am I going to pitch an agent? Yeah. And so going back to earlier in this conversation, the best thing that I ever did was got a coach. Oh yeah. But the coach broke down, because I kind of looked into it, and there was one company that, I think that at that time they were coaching like 180 something millionaires, dudes that in my industry were making over $1 million a year. So I was like, okay, well, if they can do it, then I think I can do it. Like, why can't I do it? That was kind of a mindset. And I think I'm very naive, but I think that's always how I always think. Yeah. Like, my confidence is through the roof. I don't know where that comes from or why, but looking back, it just always makes me laugh, the amount of confidence that I had. But that coach was like the best thing that I ever got. Yeah. But he broke down so much stuff as far as like, hey, here's how we're going to figure out if the real estate agent actually does business. Right. And that was the first time that opened my eyes. Like in Davis County, there was like, I'm going to botch this number, but somewhere around between Davis and Weber County, there was somewhere around like 4,000 real estate agents at that time. And 400 of them did 4 or more buyer transactions in 1 year. So when you do the math on that, right, if there's only 400 of them that are actually out there working, if I would have called the other, basically 3,600 people, I'd be wasting my time.
Totally.
And so what I learned really quick is it was like, I've got to research this to even understand who I'm calling. Because if I take a bunch of people to lunch that don't do anything, then that's a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah.
And then it really taught me like, hey, here's what the pitch is going to be on the phone. Here's what you're going to do once you meet with them when you're in person. Because cold calling is completely different than like a warm lead.
Yeah. It's way harder.
But what I can tell in my industry is we get a lot of people that are excited to come to work, excited to be part of a new company. And everybody's like, hey, I'm going to put in a ton of time. But when it really comes down to it, I think people just don't know what to do. And I feel like something like that is always kind of the best help because it's like, hey, I'll show you the roadmap.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people don't believe in the actual roadmap. And it's hard to put in that amount of time, that amount of effort, that amount of work. And I think that's what I see a lot. And that's why probably in your industry, it's no different than mine. It's like really the top 20% make all the money. The 80% of people, just do okay or subpar.
Yeah. It's geared towards that. But you bring up like the coach thing. I'm a big believer in having a coach. Same reason, like going back to the same examples, but you have like professional athletes, they still have a coach. You think those guys are like all good at what they do already, right?
Correct.
I think your highest performers, they're still typically humble enough to know that I can get better, right? And I think like there's kind of that perpetual pursuit of perfection. Like I know that in my industry, there is no version of perfection, right? Yeah. I'm just going to continue to pursue that, knowing that I'm not going to get there. And I love working with a coach like the guy that I'm working with right now. He's in New Hampshire. I'm on a Zoom call with him 8:00 this morning. We're talking through what's going on in the market. Like, here's what he's just like sharing ideas, right? Yeah. He's asking me questions, kind of checking my blind spots. And so I think coaches are invaluable. Once again, finding like, hey, how do we connect? Or like, I met him in Milwaukee of all places. He's like standing up in front of this whole room and, he's talking about all this stuff. I'm like, this guy knows his stuff. Like he's legit. He like mentions like, oh, I coached this kid or something like that. And I just called him after and I was like, dude, will you coach me? Like you're saying some stuff that resonate with me. I feel like there's a couple things that I kind of have a blind spot on that I think that, you've kind of figured that part out and it's been awesome. He's great. And I think that, going back to that aspect is having a coach is almost always going to put you in a better position and it's going to help you grow because usually they'll help you get out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Is there any advice from the financial position that we haven't talked about that a nugget or two that you would probably suggest to people?
Just get started doing something. I think sometimes people they're afraid, like they just don't know, where do I start? Like, what do I do? Right? Like maybe I'm doing my 401k, but like, what do I do to get started? Just start doing something. And if you don't know, like just start asking people like, well, who do you use as your advisor? Find somebody that you like and just start getting money going away on an automated and consistent basis. Yeah. Right. Like it's not what you know as much as how you behave. And so whatever you do, just start attempting to put money away. Yeah. I think like just being in the game, you just have to be in the game. And if you do that, like history tells us that you're going to come out better than where you started.
Yeah. Love it. This conversation's been awesome. I think for me, cause it's like, I think you hit it spot on with the whole coaching thing. I think that's kind of been the theme of this whole thing. It's like, if you want to be good at anything in life, whether it's weightlifting, financial stuff, golf, whatever that might be, it's all about getting just with the right people to help you move forward in life. Obviously before we end this, I just want to know what's the lowest score you've ever shot?
62.
62.
Yep.
How many club championships?
I don't know. Enough. No, only one hand.
Only one hand?
We're only on one
That's
hand.
It?
Yeah.
Oh, it's more only than on I got. Hand.
Well, you'll get there. I think you got a couple on the net side, don't you?
Bro,
kidding.
Can
I tell my favorite story about you though before we're done?
Please,
Because we got to end
here
this
we
on
go.
like a high note. We
Here
can't
we
be
go.
talking about boring market stuff all day.
Let's hear the greatest story ever.
I meant to send this to Keely for you for your birthday.
Yeah.
So I have to apologize that
Yeah,
I didn't do
you're
that.
good.
But Rhett, like, I've known Rhett for a while. Obviously, we met golfing. I think you guys all got that by now. But we're playing at Valley View. Do you even know what I'm going to say
I know
right now?
exactly what you're going to say.
We're on hole 10 at Valley View. The thing
What
with
tournament
Rhett is,
was
like,
this, though?
I think it was a Valley View Open, like in August or something.
I think it was a pretty good tournament.
It was a big tournament.
And let's, like, before you tell this story,
you know what it is. That's why it's
I know
great.
exactly what the story is. Here's the love-hate with golfers. You have to play all the time.
You do.
You like absolutely have to play almost every day. You've got to be chipping. You've got to be putting. You've got to be hitting the ball. Because, I mean, just the slightest error just multiplies.
Yep.
And so it's just so frustrating when you suck at golf and you used to be pretty decent at golf. And so it's like one of those thoughts where it's like, we should probably just retire.
You should give yourself more credit, by the way. You're acting like you don't play.
But what I'm saying is it's that feeling where it's like, I've done this before, and it's not like you just get on your bike and ride it again. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is going to take an absurd amount of time to get back to the level of where I was.
Yeah.
And I don't have that time.
Yeah.
And so then you just get so frustrated. It's like, we should probably just hang this up. We should just retire.
Golf is, you just need a little bit of time and money. A lot of time and a little bit of money goes a long way in golf. It's all about time.
But continue with this phenomenal story.
But I've never seen Rhett get mad ever, even to this day.
I'm pretty even kill.
Even kill you. I've never ever seen you get mad. Rhett's version of getting mad is this: like, he's on the 10th hole. I don't know where the shot went. I don't know if it was a shank. I don't know if you kind of like chunked it or thinned it over the green, but it wasn't your best effort. He just turns around and there's a road running by the side of this hole, and he takes his club, and it was the most beautiful club throw I've ever seen. It was like the tomahawk. It probably went like 150 yards. It definitely went farther than whatever the road. Ball
we
went.
Know that.
It went over the road. And I don't know if you know this, but after the round, the other guys that we were playing with, we went over there to try to find it, and we were like digging through the weeds. We never found it, but we were going to like encase it and give it to you. So I'm still sad we didn't find it.
You know what's funny is I bet there's been like 8 or 9 people looking for that golf club because it's a 64-degree lob wedge.
It's hard to find.
Which, if anybody has played golf with me, like I have a very high swing speed, which means when you miss the ball very good. But the issue is in golf is like when you're too close to the green, it's like I can't just tone it down. I mean, who wants to hit a 60-degree wedge all the time?
Nobody.
So I go to a 64-degree lob versus a 60, because then I can get a full swing on it. And I think that club just ruined my life.
I think you're regretting that you threw it now because you want to.
I do want it back though. And it's probably just
you've got a treasure trove of golf clubs though, so I think you'll be all right.
No, dude, I appreciate your time more than anything. I think this has been super beneficial. I mean, I know for some people this is probably a little boring.
That's okay.
But at the same time, like I feel like there's so many good nuggets on, why you should invest your money or why you should stay consistent or, what the outcome kind of looks like. And I think for everybody out there listening, it's just getting started. And then I think it's the consistency of staying in the game. I think the hardest part for people, and the ebbs and flow of life are always going to happen, but it's like, how do you get started? And then how do you continue doing that every single month? I would say Keely's probably the reason I work with you more than anything.
Good.
Because I'm a risk taker. She's the big saver. So she's like, the only way that we're going to save money is you got to give everything to Luke, So, I just want to say thanks more than anything for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
It's been
fun.
super fun.
Didn't know I'd ever make it on a podcast. I feel like I kind of made it at this point. So
Your dad life's good. If you guys need a good partner in golf, it's got to be a pretty good golf course. It can't be, Rose Park. You just don't invite him to Rose Park, but
I'll show up.
Luke could be your scramble man, and you could take it every single time. But no more than thing. Genuinely appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks. This has been awesome.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.